For over a decade, Bob and Michelle Duggar sold the American public a masterclass in hypervigilance. They sat on our television screens, smiling their serene smiles, and bragged about their foolproof methods for keeping their massive brood pure, safe, and entirely separated from the evils of the secular world. We all remember the infamous rules. The buddy system, where older siblings were assigned to watch younger ones like hawks. The strict, non-negotiable chaperoning, where no one was ever permitted to be alone. The side hugs. The internet filters. The idea that a Duggar child was never, ever out of sight. They marketed this extreme, suffocating parenting as the ultimate shield against darkness. Yet, as we are now discovering in real time, that shield was nothing but a prop. During a massive, heavily chaperoned family vacation to Panama City Beach, Florida, in the year 2020, Joseph Duggar allegedly committed a horrific, unthinkable crime against a 9-year-old child right under his parents' noses. And what is perhaps the most sickening part of this entire breaking news story is the mounting evidence and our exclusive theories suggesting that the family buried it. They knew, and they kept it hidden for years to protect the brand. Before we dive deep into the exact timeline, the history of Duggar cover-ups, and the explosive new details of what really happened on that Florida trip, I need you to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We are tracking every single update on this case as it unfolds, bringing you the exclusive theories and deep dive analysis you won't find anywhere else. Your support helps us keep exposing the truth behind reality television's darkest family. So please, subscribe right now, turn on those notification bells, and let's get right into it. To truly understand the gravity of this 2020 Florida trip and how spectacular a failure of parenting it represents, we have to travel back in time to what we can call the golden era of the Duggar family empire. For years, Duggar family vacations were the absolute crown jewels of TLC content. Whether it was cramming everyone into a cross-country RV, taking over an entire floor of a hotel, or heading down to the beach, these trips were portrayed as the epitome of wholesome, chaotic fun. The camera crews captured it all, feeding the audience a carefully curated narrative of perfect Christian harmony. We saw the matching polo shirts. We saw the industrial-sized batches of tater-tot casserole. We saw Bob and Michelle leading their army of children through airports and tourist traps, constantly counting heads, constantly reinforcing the buddy system. The public ate it up because it looked like a marvel of logistical parenting. Panama City Beach, in particular, was a classic Duggar destination. It was a place where they could retreat into their own insular bubble, renting massive beachfront properties that could house dozens of family members at once. In the golden era, these Florida trips were edited to show teenagers cheerfully building sandcastles, massive group dinners, and the unwavering enforcement of modesty rules, even by the ocean. The narrative was clear. The Duggars were in the world, but not of the world. They had created a portable fortress of morality. The buddy system was praised as a brilliant way to build sibling bonds and ensure safety. Bob and Michelle were hailed as the ultimate authorities, the all-seeing patriarch and matriarch who ran a tight, flawless ship. But we now know, and perhaps have always known deep down, that the shiny TLC edit was a total fabrication. The fortress was built on sand. The reality of these massive family gatherings was a logistical nightmare where chaos was barely contained, and where the sheer volume of people actually provided the perfect cover for predators to operate unseen. The golden era was nothing but a false image, a lucrative brand built on the illusion of safety, while the most vulnerable members of their circle were left entirely unprotected. Our exclusive theories point to the fact that the buddy system wasn't designed to protect the children from abuse. It was designed to keep them completely isolated from the outside world, making it impossible for them to ever report what was happening behind closed doors. Of course, we had warnings. The first massive, earth-shattering cracks in the Duggar Foundation appeared long before this 2020 Florida trip. If you want to know how the family reacted when Joseph's alleged crimes came to light, you only have to look at the exact blueprint they used in the past. We already knew from the infamous 2015 Josh Duggar police report that the family's very first instinct when abuse occurs is to handle it strictly in-house. When Josh's horrific crimes against his own sisters were finally exposed to the public, the world learned exactly how Jim Bob and Michelle operate in a crisis. They didn't immediately call the police. They didn't separate the abuser from the victims. Instead, they sent Josh to a family friend who lacked any professional qualifications for counseling. They essentially put him in a timeout, forced the victims to forgive him, and then continued building their reality television empire as if nothing had ever happened. The 2015 scandal taught us everything we needed to know about the Duggar family's crisis management strategy. They prioritized protecting the abuser, preserving the patriarchal structure, and saving the family brand over the physical and psychological safety of the victims. Every single time. The Institute in Basic Life Principles, the radical fundamentalist cult the family belongs to, preaches a strict chain of command. In this twisted theology, a father's reputation is paramount, and any public scandal is viewed as an attack by Satan rather than a demand for legal justice. When the Josh Duggar scandal broke, Jim Bob and Michelle went on national television and downplayed the abuse as the mistakes of a curious teenager. They framed themselves as the true victims of a media witch hunt. They showed us, without a shadow of a doubt, that their primary allegiance is to the cover-up. So, when we look at the events of 2020, we have to apply this historical lens. Jim Bob and Michelle had already successfully weathered one storm, transitioning their canceled show into the spin-off Counting On. They had learned that if they just kept quiet, controlled the narrative, and kept the victims isolated, they could survive almost anything. This established pattern of sweeping abuse under the rug is exactly why our exclusive theories suggest that the 2020 Florida incident was handled with the exact same playbook. They thought they were invincible. They thought the walls of their compound, both physical and metaphorical, were high enough to keep the law out forever. Fast forward to March 2026. The walls finally come crashing down. The catalyst for this ultimate downfall is an act of sheer, unimaginable bravery. A victim, now 14 years old, finally walks into the authorities in Tontitown, Arkansas, and speaks the unspeakable. She sits down for a forensic interview and details what Joseph Duggar allegedly did to her several times during that massive family vacation to Panama City Beach in 2020, when she was just 9 years old. Think about the timeline here. Think about what was happening in 2020. The world was in lockdown. The family was likely more insular than ever. And during a trip that was supposed to be a safe family retreat, a nightmare was unfolding. The fact that this victim carried this secret for years before finally breaking the silence is a testament to the suffocating culture of fear and obedience that the Duggars and the IBLP instill in young girls. But the silence is broken now. The police officers in Tontitown listen to her story, and they realize the sheer magnitude of what they are dealing with. They immediately contact deputies in Bay County, Florida, where the crimes took place. The geographical distance, the passage of time, the fame of the family, none of it matters anymore. The machinery of justice, which the Duggars had dodged and manipulated for so long, finally locks on to Joseph Duggar. This moment, this singular act of a teenager finding her voice, is the spark that detonates the remaining fragments of the Duggar legacy. It forces us to look back at every single photo, every single social media post, and every single carefully crafted public statement from that era with total disgust. Where were the chaperones? Where was the buddy system? Where was the hyper-vigilance that Jim Bob and Michelle so proudly preached? Our exclusive theory suggests that the adults in the room were far more concerned with maintaining the facade of a happy vacation than actually monitoring the safety of the children in their care. The catalyst wasn't just a police report. It was the total shattering of the last remaining illusion that anyone in that family was safe. The sheer hubris of Joseph Duggar in the years following that 2020 Florida vacation is enough to make your blood run cold. For nearly 6 years, he walked around with the darkest of secrets, completely convinced that he had gotten away with it. This brings us to a crucial element of our exclusive theories regarding the psychology of the Duggar men. Joseph grew up watching his older brother Josh commit horrific acts and face absolutely no secular consequences for over a decade. He was raised in a system that taught him that men are at the absolute top of the food chain, that their urges are an unfortunate byproduct of their biology, and that any sins committed can simply be washed away by a private, tearful apology to the patriarchal head of the family. Joseph truly believed that the passage of time had essentially erased his crime. He thought that because the victim was young, because she was trapped within the same high-control religious environment, and because the Duggar brand was so heavily insulated, the events in Panama City Beach would forever remain buried in the sand. But Joseph severely underestimated the shifting tides within his own community, and his arrogant overconfidence ultimately became the instrument of his own destruction. When he was finally confronted about the allegations, he didn't immediately clam up and demand a lawyer like a normal person facing decades in prison would. Instead, operating purely on the warped logic of the Institute in Basic Life Principles, he spoke. When the victim's father reached out to confront him, Joseph arrogantly admitted to his actions on a recorded line. Let that sink in for a moment. He openly confessed to a crime against a child over the phone. Why would he do this? Our exclusive theories suggest that Joseph assumed this was merely a spiritual accountability call. In the twisted world of the IBLP, if you sin against someone, you are taught to go to their headship, their father, and clear your conscience. It is an entirely closed-loop justice system that completely bypasses the police, the courts, and the law of the land. Joseph assumed that by offering a hollow apology to the patriarch of the victim's family, they would pray about it, sweep it under the rug, and officially close the case in the eyes of their God. He thought he was participating in a private cult ritual of forgiveness. He had no idea he was actually walking straight into a meticulously planned sting operation. The moment that audio recording was secured, the entire game changed forever. The Bay County Sheriff's Office arrest affidavit drops, and suddenly, the dark, rotting underbelly of that 2020 family vacation is dragged out into the blinding light of public scrutiny. The exposure was absolute and catastrophic. As the affidavit makes its way across the internet, the chilling exactness of the timeline is laid bare for the whole world to see. It isn't just a vague accusation. It is a meticulously documented nightmare, complete with dates, locations, and horrifyingly specific circumstances. And the moment those details go public, the internet does what the internet does best. Millions of former fans, true crime sleuths, and critics immediately pull up the archives. They start digging through every single Instagram post, every single YouTube vlog, and every single photograph uploaded by the Duggar family during that March 2020 trip to Panama City Beach. The public begins doing the terrible, sickening math. We start looking at the background of these bright, sunny beach photos. Who was in the house? Where were the designated chaperones? Where was Jim Bob? Where was Michelle? And most glaringly, where was Joseph's wife, Kendra? During that specific window in 2020, Kendra had recently given birth and was likely exhausted, distracted, and busy tending to their own young children. The sprawling layout of the massive beachfront rental property, which the family had likely boasted about in their vlogs to show off their wealth and status, is suddenly being analyzed as a crime scene. How does a grown man isolate a 9-year-old child in a house packed with over 24 hyper-vigilant, supposedly modest, deeply conservative Christians? The math simply does not add up unless there was a systemic, catastrophic failure of every single rule the family claimed to live by. Our exclusive theories point to the undeniable fact that the entire family's complicity is now under a massive, unrelenting microscope. You cannot claim to have eyes on your children at all times. You cannot enforce a strict buddy system where siblings are never left alone, and then simultaneously claim ignorance when a predator operates freely within your own rented house. The affidavit proves that the environment Jim Bob and Michelle cultivated was not a safe haven. It was a hunting ground. The facade of the happy family vacation is entirely shattered, replaced by the grim reality of a house full of people turning a blind eye to the dynamics unfolding right in front of them. The exposure of the Florida trip timeline forces every single adult who was present on that vacation to answer for their whereabouts, their attentiveness, and their terrifying negligence. As the public outrage reaches an absolute fever pitch, the Duggar PR machine, a machine that has historically been one of the most aggressive, spin-heavy operations in the reality television industry, goes completely, shockingly silent. The scramble for damage control is unlike anything we have ever seen from this family before. In the past, when scandals broke, Jim, Bob, and Michelle would immediately rush out a carefully worded, highly manipulative joint statement on their family website. They would talk about walking through the valley of the shadow of death. They would ask for prayers for their family. And they would subtly shift the blame away from the abuser while demanding grace and privacy. They used their platform to control the narrative and gaslight the public. But this time, nothing. The silence is deafening. The website is not updated. Their social media channels are completely abandoned or heavily restricted, with comment sections scrubbed and locked down. Jim, Bob, and Michelle refused to issue a single statement regarding Joseph's arrest or the horrific allegations stemming from that 2020 trip. This total blackout speaks volumes. Our exclusive theory suggests that the parents are in a state of absolute panic because they realize that the old playbook simply will not work anymore. The public is entirely out of patience, and the authorities are no longer willing to look the other way. Fans and critics alike are screaming into the void, demanding to know the truth. Did Jim, Bob, and Michelle know about these allegations before the police got involved? Were they aware of what happened in Florida back in 2020? And did they actively participate in keeping it quiet for the last 6 years? The sheer terror radiating from the Duggar compound is palpable, and the silence is the ultimate admission that they have completely lost control of the monster they created. But the most fascinating and explosive aspect of this entire downfall is the unprecedented betrayal that brought it all to light. For decades, the Duggar family relied on the ironclad loyalty of the IBLP network. The cult's code of silence was their ultimate insurance policy. They operated under the assumption that no matter how bad things got, no fellow fundamentalist would ever break rank and involve the secular authorities. But the victim's family did the unthinkable. By going to the Tontitown police, by participating in a forensic interview, and by setting up that recorded sting operation with Joseph, they actively and deliberately burned the IBLP code of silence to the ground. This was not just a legal maneuver. It was a massive, earth-shattering spiritual rebellion. The victim's father chose the safety of his daughter and the pursuit of actual legal justice over his loyalty to Jim Bob Duggar and the patriarchal cult. He broke the umbrella of authority. By wearing a wire or recording that phone call, he sent a clear and undeniable message to the Duggar family. Your rules no longer apply to us. We will not sweep this under the rug. We will not accept a tearful prayer as penance for a destroyed childhood. This choice completely isolated Joseph. There is no protective circle of church elders to save him this time. There is no spin campaign that can unrecord his own voice. The victim's family exposed the systemic, rotting failures of the Duggar empire by simply refusing to play their rigged game anymore. Their bravery not only secured the arrest of an alleged predator, but it completely fractured the impenetrable wall of silence that has protected this family for over 20 years. This brings us to the most sickening, heartbreaking, and profound realization of this entire unfolding nightmare. For over a decade, Jim, Bob, and Michelle Duggar looked directly into the TLC cameras and warned their massive audience about the ever-present dangers of the secular world. They preached from their literal and metaphorical pulpit that public schools were indoctrination centers, that pop music was the devil's playground, and that even regular secular clothing could lead a pure soul astray. They built an entire fortress in Springdale, Arkansas, designed specifically to keep out the supposed evils of modern society. And when they traveled, like they did on that fateful 2020 trip to Panama City Beach, they brought the walls of that fortress with them. They policed the swimsuits, they strictly controlled the media consumption, and they ruthlessly enforced the buddy system to shield their children from the outside world. But the ultimate devastating irony of this entire tragedy is that the hyper-vigilant parenting rules they sold to the world as the ultimate protection against secular evil completely and utterly failed to protect a child from the evil lurking right inside their own family. In fact, our exclusive theory suggests that those very rules didn't just fail to protect the children, they actively enabled the abuse. By teaching young girls from the moment they could walk to be entirely submissive, unquestioning, and obedient to the men in their lives, they groomed the perfect, silent victims. By teaching the boys that they were the undisputed spiritual heads of the household, placed on a pedestal and incapable of being challenged by women or children, they cultivated the absolute perfect environment for predators to thrive. The Duggars told millions of viewers that if you just followed their strict modesty standards and their bizarre courtship rules, your family would be blessed, safe, and pure. They monetized this illusion to the tune of millions of dollars. They wrote best-selling books about it. They went on massive speaking tours. They presented themselves as the absolute gold standard of Christian parenting, judging anyone who lived differently. But while they were so incredibly busy guarding the front door against the imaginary, manufactured threat of the secular world, they left the back door wide open for the monsters living in their own hallways. The 2020 Florida trip is the ultimate, grim monument to this colossal failure. Here you had a massive family vacation, supposedly heavily chaperoned, deeply controlled, and purposefully isolated from the general public. Yet, a 9-year-old child was allegedly subjected to horrific abuse by Joseph Duggar under those exact conditions. The evil they warned us about wasn't on the public beach. The evil wasn't in a movie theater or a secular shopping mall. The evil was sharing their dining table. The evil was smiling in their heavily filtered group photos. The evil was a fully grown, married man, a supposed pillar of their fundamentalist community, operating with absolute impunity under the guise of wholesome family bonding. The system didn't break down. The dark reality is that the system worked exactly as it was designed to, protecting the powerful, elevating the men, and silencing the vulnerable. When you strip away the reality television gloss, the smiling magazine covers, and the folksy, manufactured Southern charm, you are left with a terrifying reality. The Duggar family's brand of protection was actually a prison. The children were never genuinely safe. They were simply isolated from anyone who could have ever helped them. And the moment that the 2020 arrest affidavit hit the public domain, the entire foundation of the 19 kids and counting empire crumbled to dust forever. Every single parenting book they ever sold should be pulled from the shelves and recategorized as a warning, not a guide. The irony is so incredibly dark, so profound, that it almost defies belief. They sold the world a massive, lucrative lie. And the devastating cost of that lie was paid by the innocent children they swore to God to protect. Our exclusive theories point to the reality that Bob and Michelle cannot possibly plead ignorance forever. The sheer logistical impossibility of Joseph allegedly committing these horrific acts multiple times during a heavily monitored family vacation without a single adult noticing is staggering. The silence radiating from the parents right now isn't just a carefully calculated PR strategy. It is the deafening silence of a couple who knows that the curtain has finally been pulled back, revealing the monstrous, undeniable reality of their own creation. They have nowhere left to hide. The old tricks will not work. As we continue to watch this case unfold in real time, as more court documents are inevitably unsealed, and as the true, unvarnished timeline of this 2020 Florida trip cover-up is dragged kicking and screaming into the harsh light of day, the questions are only going to get louder. The authorities in Florida and Arkansas are not going away. The public, who feels deeply betrayed by the wholesome image they were sold, is not moving on. And the days of the Duggar family handling their darkest secrets in-house are officially, permanently over. We are standing on the precipice of the biggest, most explosive reality television scandal in history. A scandal that threatens to expose a deeply entrenched network of enablers, bystanders, and complicit family members who prioritize a television show over a child's safety. The arrest of Joseph Duggar is not the end of this story. It is merely the explosive, terrifying beginning. We are going to be tracking every single motion, every single court hearing, and every single leak that comes out of Bay County and Taneytown. We will not stop digging until every single question is answered and every single enabler is fully exposed. Which brings me to the most important part of this entire investigation, because we need to hear from you. We know this family operates as a tight-knit, secretive unit, and we know their long, documented history of covering up crimes to protect the family brand. Who do you think knew about this 2020 incident before the arrest? Did Bob help cover it up? Drop your explosive theories in the comments and subscribe for the next major update.